The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled up to the archive, a squat building on the rural edge of town, wind whipping dust across the empty lot. I'd driven 3 hours for this job, escaping the ache of my grandmother's death back home. Inside, shelves loomed like silent sentinels, air thick with old paper and earth. She was there already, the lead historian, her figure sharp against the dim stacks. Tall, reserved, eyes like polished stone. "You're the new assistant," she said, voice low, handing me gloves. "Catalog these under my watch." Her gaze held mine too long, expectations unspoken. Then, without warning, she pressed keys into my palm. "After hours, if you need them." I gripped the wheel tighter on that last stretch of road, the landscape flattening into fields that stretched to nothing. "My name's Lena, 25, fresh out of grad school with a degree in history that felt heavier than useful after losing Gran." She raised me in that small Oregon town, her stories of hidden lives the only warmth in a house full of silence. When she passed, the walls closed in, so I applied for this position sight unseen, a research assistant at the Willow Creek Historical Archive, tucked away in eastern Washington, far from anyone who knew my grief. The building appeared suddenly, weathered brick against the sagebrush, no other cars in sight. I stepped out, boots sinking into dry soil, and pushed through the heavy door. The scent hit first, musty pages mixed with faint mildew, like breathing in forgotten years. Dim bulbs hung from the ceiling, casting long shadows over rows of metal shelves crammed with boxes and ledgers. It was quieter than I'd imagined, the isolation pressing in, the nearest town a 20-minute drive over potholed roads. She emerged from the back, wiping dust from her hands on worn jeans. Dr. Elias Thorne, 40-ish, I guessed, with short-cropped, dark hair, streaked gray at the temples, and a presence that filled the room without effort. Her flannel shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms marked by faint ink stains. She nodded once. "Lena, right on time." Her voice carried a clipped edge, like she measured every word. I nodded back, setting my bag down. "Yes, ready to start." She led me to a scarred oak table in the center, pulling out a chair. "These are the McAllister papers. Fragile. Handle with care, gloves always, no bending spines." Her instructions came quick, precise. How to log entries, cross-reference dates, avoid direct light. I slipped on the cotton gloves, my fingers awkward at first, and she watched, arms crossed. Her eyes, deep brown, flicked over my work. Not critical, but assessing, like she was deciding if I'd break something irreplaceable. As I lifted the first folder, yellowed letters tied with twine, her hands steadied mine for a second, correcting the angle. They were calloused, strong from years of this labor, and the brief contact sent a quiet jolt through me. I pulled back, focusing on the faded ink. "What is this collection?" I asked, voice steadier than I felt. She leaned against the table, her shadow falling across the page. "Family archive from the early 190s. Local ranchers, mostly men, but there's more. Women's diaries, suppressed accounts of land disputes, migrations, hidden threads in the official records." Her tone softened just a fraction, a hint of something personal in the way she said, "hidden." She traced a finger along a map's edge, not touching, just hovering. The town fathers buried parts of it. Politics, scandals. We're piecing it back. I nodded, the weight of it settling. Gran had told stories like that, women's voices erased by time. "Sounds important. Why me for this?" "You're here because you know how to listen to the quiet parts," she said, meeting my eyes again. That pull returned, subtle, her authority not loud but steady, drawing me in like the archive itself. We worked side by side for hours, her correcting my notes with a pen, our elbows brushing the table's edge. The light faded outside, windows turning gold, then gray. As evening crept in, she straightened, rubbing her neck. "We need to sort the overflow tonight. Urgent. Grant deadline next week." She glanced at the clock, then at me. "Stay late? The drive's long." I hesitated, the isolation suddenly real, but nodded. "Sure, whatever it takes." She smiled then, rare and brief, like sunlight through dust. "Good. Let's get to it." Days blurred into a rhythm of dust and deciphering. Morning started with the archive's door groaning open, coffee steaming in chipped mugs we shared from the back room. Elias arrived first, always, her truck kicking up gravel like a warning. I'd follow soon after, the road's isolation a mirror to the quiet settling in my chest. We worked at the oak table, sleeves pushed up, gloves whitening our hands. Faded letters spilled secrets, farm yields, feuds over water rights, women's scrawled notes on births and losses tucked between men's bold declarations. I'd lean over maps, yellowed edges cracking under my fingers, tracing lines of old boundaries that no longer held. Elias sat across, her pen scratching steady, correcting my translations with a nod or a line drawn firm. Her smiles came rare, like rain in July. One afternoon, I pieced together a letter's date from a water-stained corner, matching it to a ledger's entry. She looked up, eyes catching mine. "Sharp catch, Lena." The corner of her mouth lifted, brief but real, warming the dim space. I felt it in my gut, that pull tightening, but buried it under the next page. Curiosity gnawed as the hours stretched. She moved through the stacks like she owned them, pulling boxes with ease, her frame lean from years of this solitary haul. No ring on her finger, no photos in the office, just shelves and silence. One evening, as lamps flickered on, I ventured a question. "How long have you been here alone?" She paused, gloved hand on a ledger. 10 years. Started as a grant project, stayed when funding dried. Her voice stayed even, but her eyes flicked to the window, where fields rolled empty under fading light. Town's got its own history. Doesn't like sharing. I nodded, wanting more. The archive felt like her, guarded, layered with unspoken weight. But I held back, words sticking. What if I pushed too far? This job was my anchor, fragile as the papers we handled. One wrong step and I'd be driving those 3 hours back to nothing. Proximity built the tension slow. We'd lean in over shared documents, shoulders nearly touching. The table's scarred wood a barrier that wasn't. Once, reaching for a map, our hands brushed, knuckles grazing, her skin warm through the cotton. Time hung. She didn't pull away first. I did, heart thudding like boots on gravel, focusing on ink blots instead. Awareness lingered after. I'd catch her watching as I logged entries, her gaze steady, measuring. Where mine would drift to her hands, steady as they turned pages, veins tracing paths like rivers on those old maps. The air thickened with it, unspoken, the archive's hush amplifying every shift, every breath. Nights extended without asking. We'd sort until the windows went black, her inviting me to stay with a glance at the clock. Roads dark. I'd agree, the isolation outside matching the one building inside me. Conversations edged personal. Her mentioning a favorite trail beyond town, me sharing Gran's tales of hidden letters in attic trunks. But always, I stopped short. Probing felt like risking the fragile trust, the job, the quiet rhythm holding me steady. One Thursday, deep in the McAllister box, my fingers hit resistance. A drawer in the side table, locked tight, its keyhole dusted but sealed. Inside, shadows hinted at more. Thicker files, perhaps the suppressed parts she'd mentioned. I glanced at Elias, her head bent over a diary. "This drawer's stuck. Anything in there we need?" She straightened, eyes narrowing. The silence stretched, her weighing something unspoken. Then she set her pen down. "Not yet, but maybe soon." That night, as we packed up, the question burned. I needed access, not just for the work, but to understand the layers she guarded. The pull demanded it. The next morning, I arrived early, the locked drawer pulling at me like an unanswered question. Elias was already there, sorting ledgers under the single bulb that swayed slightly from the ceiling fan's hum. She looked up as the door creaked shut behind me, her expression neutral, but her eyes held that steady weight. "Sleep okay?" she asked, handing me a mug of black coffee, steam rising in the cool air. "Fine," I said, taking it, our fingers not quite touching this time. The routine settled back in, but the drawer lingered in my mind. We worked through the morning, deciphering a stack of migration records, her pen tapping rhythmically against the table. By noon, the sun slanted through the high windows, dust motes dancing like secrets in the light. That afternoon, breakthrough came. Unexpectedly. I was cross-referencing a faded map against a bundle of letters when a phrase jumped out. Women's land claims from 1912, buried under men's signatures. Elias, I said, voice low, sliding the page toward her. This ties to the suppressed files. The drawer might have the originals. She leaned in, her shoulder brushing mine, breath warm against the paper. Her eyes scanned the ink, widening just a fraction. You're right. That breakthrough we needed. She straightened, rubbing her temple, the silence stretching. The archive felt smaller then, the shelves closing in with what wasn't said. It's late. Stay tonight. We'll open it. I nodded, heart picking up. As evening fell, the windows darkened, and we lit the desk lamp, its glow flickering across the wood. The floorboards creaked under our steps as we moved the table aside. Elias pulled a small key from her pocket, hesitating, her hand hovering over the lock. This isn't just work, she said quietly. These files, they're personal. I watched her, the reluctance in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened. Trust didn't come easy here, in this isolated place where history guarded its own. But she'd seen me work, seen the care in my hands. Finally, she turned to the key, the drawer sliding open with a soft scrape. Inside lay thicker folders, bound in faded cloth, edges worn from hidden years. We pulled them out together, laying them on the table under the lamp's unsteady light. The first file revealed letters, women's handwriting, looping and urgent, detailing land fights, alliances formed in secret against town councils that favored men. Suppressed histories, yes, but raw. Accounts of women banding together, sharing resources, loves unspoken in the margins. One diary entry caught my eye. A woman's confession of leaving a marriage for another woman's farm. The words smudged as if tears had fallen. Elias traced the page, her finger still. They hid these, to protect the families. Or bury them. Her voice dropped, vulnerability cracking through. She sat back, the lamp casting shadows on her face. My own family. Similar. Grandmother came west in the 40s, alone after her partner died. Town said it was illness, but the letters hint at more. They burned what they could find. I looked at her, the pieces shifting. Her guarded life here, the solitude, it echoed those pages. Why keep it hidden? I asked, soft, not pushing. She met my gaze, the flickering light making her eyes warmer. Fear, loss. My mother warned me. Don't let them take what's yours. She paused, folding her hands. I came here to uncover it all, but sometimes the past feels too close. The air thickened with her words, the creak of settling beams the only sound. I nodded, sharing a fragment of my own. Gran did the same, hid her stories after my mom left. Said some truths break more than they heal. Our eyes held, a bridge forming in the dimness. From there, evenings stretched without force. We'd unlock the drawer after the official hours, the keys now in my pocket too. Her trust, a quiet gift. Conversations wove through the work, fragments of lives spilling out like the papers. One night, under the lamp's glow, we pored over a bundle of photographs, sepia women standing arm in arm on porches, their smiles defiant. Look at them, Elias said, her voice low. Building lives in the cracks. I leaned closer, our knees touching under the table. Like us here. The words slipped out, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she shared more. A childhood trail where she'd found her grandmother's hidden journal, the isolation of grad school after coming out young. I told her about Gran's attic, the letters I'd found after her death, words of a woman she'd loved in secret during the war. The archive's silence amplified it all, floorboards groaning as we shifted, the scent of aged ink mixing with cooling night air slipping through a cracked window. Nights blurred, coffee turning cold as we talked, her laughter rare but real over a quirky entry, like a woman's recipe for moonshine pie scribbled in code. Proximity grew, hands brushing as we passed files, breaths sinking in the hush. The lamp flickered, casting our shadows long across the shelves. the world outside forgotten in fields gone black. One evening, deep into the files, a document surfaced. A letter from 192, tucked in a ledger's spine. It described two women, ranch hands turned partners, their bond forged in labor and night whispers, ended by a town scandal. They loved in secret, Elias read aloud, voice catching, until it cost them everything. I looked up, the words mirroring the pull between us, the unspoken tension humming like the lamp's faint buzz. Her eyes met mine, lingering, the air charged with what the past hinted at in our present. The letter lay open between us, its words hanging in the air like dust after a wind. Elias closed the folder slowly, her fingers lingering on the edge, and pushed back from the table. The lamp hummed softly, the only sound besides our breathing. "Enough for tonight," she said, but her voice carried a reluctance, like she didn't want the quiet to swallow what we'd uncovered. I nodded, stacking the papers, the ache in my chest sharpening. That forbidden romance in the document, it mirrored the thread pulling between us, thin but insistent. Professional lines blurred in these late hours, the archive our world, isolated and dim. We packed up in silence, her shoulder brushing mine as we shelved the files, a touch that sent warmth through the cotton of my shirt. The next days deepened the routine. Mornings brought the familiar creak of the door, coffee brewing in the back room where a single window overlooked the empty fields. Elias would pour 2 mugs, handing me one with a nod, steam curling up like unspoken thoughts. We'd work through the stacks, gloves on, deciphering more from the drawer. Women's alliances, coded messages and quilt patterns, lives pieced from fragments. Coffee breaks stretched longer now. Instead of quick sips at the table, we'd move to the window, leaning against the sill as the sun dipped low. The glass was cool against my back, the outside world a blur of sage and sky. "That letter," I started one afternoon, mug warm in my hands. "It makes you wonder how many stories like that got lost." Elias stared out, her profile sharp in the light. "Too many. Women building something, then having it stripped away." She sipped, her throat moving slowly. "I came here thinking I could fix that, unearth it all." Her words trailed, vulnerability edging in, but she caught herself, turning back to the table. "Let's get to the restorations." Restorations brought the tension closer. We'd tape fragile edges, her hands guiding mine over a torn map, fingers overlapping in the careful work. One evening, as twilight faded, I reached for a brush to clean ink smudges, and our hands collided. Hers steady, mine hesitating. The soft horsehair bristles paused mid-air, her skin against mine warm, calloused from years of handling these relics. Breath caught in my throat, held there, the air between us thick as the dust settling on unused shelves. She didn't pull away immediately. Her eyes flicked to mine, dark and searching, then dropped back to the page. "Careful," she murmured, but it wasn't about the map. I swallowed, the ache blooming low in my chest, an unspoken attraction twisting amid the professional lines we'd drawn. This job was my refuge, her supervision my structure. Crossing into something more felt like risking the fragile hold I had on steady ground. Yet every glance, every near touch pulled harder, like gravity shifting under the archive's weight. Nights extended, the keys in my pocket a constant reminder of her trust. We'd linger after the official close, the building settling around us with creaks and sighs. Elias shared more in fragments, guarded but real. One night, as we taped a diary's spine, she paused, the glue drying sticky between us. "I was alone for years after grad school," she said, voice low, eyes on the page. "Came out young, lost friends, family pulled back. This place, it's safe. No expectations." Her words landed heavy, echoing my own buried losses. Grand gone, the small town walls that stifled wanting. I wanted to reach out, bridge the space, but held back, the professional barrier a shield. "Sounds heavy," I said instead, my voice soft. "But you're not alone here." She looked up then, a flicker of something raw crossing her face. Fear of exposure, perhaps, the isolation she'd built cracking under the weight of sharing. "Maybe not," she replied, and we returned to the work. But the air hummed with it. Small gestures wove in, unasked. The chill seeped through the brick walls as fall deepened, nights turning crisp. One evening, as we pored over odd discoveries, a bundle of pressed wildflowers with notes on their meanings, symbols for secret meetings, Elias laughed, a quiet sound that warmed the dim space. "Look at this one. Language of the heart," she read, her finger tracing the faded script. "They were clever." I laughed too, the sound surprising me, light in the hush. The cold bit deeper then, my breath visible in the lamp's glow. Without a word, she fetched a blanket from the back room, an old wool thing, moth-eaten but thick, and draped it over our shoulders as we leaned over the table. Her arm pressed close under the fabric, warmth seeping through, the scent of her, earth and faint lavender, mixing with the archive's must. We sat like that, sharing the heat, her shoulders solid against mine, laughter fading into comfortable silence. The ache grew in those moments, my mind turning inward. What was this pull? Attraction, yes, but deeper. An understanding forged in the quiet labor of uncovering hidden lives. Her reserved strength drew me. The way she moved through the stacks with purpose, her rare smiles like rewards. But the lines held. She was the lead, I the assistant. One slip and the archive's isolation could turn suffocating, the job slipping away like sand through gloved fingers. Conversations lingered longer by the window, coffee turning cold as we talked. She'd mention a trail beyond town, the crunch of gravel under boots, mirroring our daily rhythm. I'd share bits of grand stories, women in the war, loves whispered in code. Her revelations came guarded, the fear of emotional exposure after past hurts, a partner who'd left when the solitude of this work proved too much. "I built walls," she admitted one night, blanket shared again against the chill. "Safer that way." I nodded, the internal tug-of-war fierce. Part of me wanted to shatter those walls, to lean in and let the attraction spill. But caution rooted me, the grief I'd fled, the need for this place as anchor. "Walls keep things out," I said. "But they keep you in, too." She met my eyes, the silence stretching, charged. Then thunder rumbled outside, distant but building, wind rattling the windows. Rain started, pattering hard against the glass, turning the fields to mud. "Storm's coming," Elias said, standing. "You should head out before it hits." I glanced at the clock. Late, the road ahead dark and winding. Lightning flashed, illuminating her face, concern etching lines around her eyes. "Can't," I replied, heart quickening not just from the weather. "Too risky." She hesitated, then nodded. "Stay then. Couch in the back room's fine. We'll ride it out." The storm trapped us, rain lashing the building, wind howling through cracks. We lit extra lamps, the flicker dancing shadows across the shelves. Isolation deepened, the world outside erased, forcing us into the archive's heart. Together, the night stretching with unspoken possibility. The storm hit full force as we settled in the back room, rain hammering the roof like fists on old wood. Elias rummaged in a cabinet, pulling out a tin of tea leaves and a battered kettle. "Electric's spotty in this weather," she said, filling it from a jug. We lit candles instead, their flames guttering in glass holders, casting wavering light across the cramped space. The couch sagged under threadbare cushions, a wool blanket folded neat on one arm. Outside, wind tore at the eaves, the archive groaning like it held its own secrets against the onslaught. She struck a match, the sulfur sharp in the air, and touched it to a camp stove's burner. Water heated slow, bubbles rising with a low rumble that matched the thunder. I sat on the couch's edge, knees drawn up, watching her move, efficient, unhurried, her shadow stretching long on the wall. The isolation pressed in, no escape now, just us and the night. "Tea'll warm you," she said, pouring steaming water over loose leaves in 2 mugs. The scent bloomed, chamomile and something earthier, cutting through the damp chill seeping from the walls. We sipped in silence at first, candles flickering, wax dripping slow. The light played over her face, softening the lines around her eyes, making her look less guarded. Thunder cracked close, shaking the floorboards, and I set my mug down, hands wrapping the blanket tighter. "Storms like this remind me of home," I said, voice low to match the hush. "Oregon coast, rain that never stopped. Gran would light the fire, tell stories to drown it out." Elias nodded, blowing on her tea. Here it's the wind that bites, rattles the windows till morning. She paused, eyes on the flame. What kind of stories? The question hung, simple but opening something. I leaned back, the couch creaking, candlelight warming the room's edges. Hidden ones. Gran raised me after my mom split young. Small town, everyone knew your business, but not the real parts. She talked about women in the war, letters from a friend, coded words about nights away from bases, desires she never named outright, but you felt them in the pauses. I traced the mug's rim, heat lingering on my fingers. Growing up rural, it was all stifled. Church on Sundays, eyes on every move. Wanting something different, someone different, felt like inviting the storm inside. She listened. Mug paused midway, her gaze steady in the low light. The rain eased to a steady drum, candles steadying too, their glow pooling on the table between us. Stifled, she echoed, voice soft. That's the word. My family came from the same cloth, Western settlers, land tied to legacy. But mine buried more. She set her mug down, hands folding in her lap, knuckles pale. Grandmother's history is in those files. She and her partner, women, together in the 40s. Ranch work, shared cabin, till a fire took it. Town called it accident, but the letters say arson. Whispers of scandal, them too close. The words landed heavy, the archive's secrets spilling into ours. I shifted closer, blankets slipping, the space between us shrinking. Buried in the archive? Like the drawer? She nodded, eyes distant, flame reflecting in them. I found her journals young, hidden in the attic after she passed. Sapphic history, they called it once. Women loving women, coded in plain sight. But here, in these papers, it's the whole town's underbelly. Women's loves erased, rewritten as spinsters or tragedies. Her voice cracked just a hair, vulnerability raw in the candle's flicker. I came out at 20, family fractured. Dad said it tainted the name. So I poured into this work, unearthing what they hid, including my own. The parallel struck deep, our stories threading like those old documents. I reached for another candle, lighting it with a steady hand, the match flaring brief. Gran hinted at it too. A woman in her youth, during the war, nurse, maybe lover, stifled desires, rural walls closing in. I felt it growing up, that pull to something unspoken. Dates that never happened, glances in the diner I let slide. My chest tightened, sharing it aloud like lifting a weight from the pages. Coming here, after she died, it was escape. But the ache follows. Elias met my eyes then, prolonged, the contact holding like a held breath. The candles illuminated layers, her guarded strength, my quiet seeking, echoing the era's hidden loves we'd uncovered. The documents show it, she said, voice low. That 192's letter, the ranch hands. Their tension, built in labor, nights alone. Echoes us, doesn't it? Working side by side, pulling at threads. I nodded, the air thickening, her words mirroring the rise in me. We moved back to the main room, candles carried, their light dancing over the table. She pulled the forbidden romance file, pages yellowed, ink faded but urgent. Read this part, she said, sliding it over, her hand lingering near mine. I took the page, fingers brushing hers, warm, steady, the touch electric in the dimness. The words described stolen moments, hands clasping over ledgers, eyes meeting in lamplight, desires layered under duty. Their love echoed the land's silence, I read aloud, voice catching. Built slow, till it broke the boundaries. Our eyes lifted, holding longer, the pull rising, hands now lingering on the page's edge, knuckles grazing. The storm outside faded to drizzle, but inside, tension hummed. Elias didn't move her hand, her thumb tracing the paper's corner, close to mine. Like that, she murmured. The era hid them, but the pull was there, undeniable. Breath synced, candles guttering low, shadows merging on the walls. The emotional layering deepened, our shared pasts, the document's echoes, the unspoken want threading through. I felt it in my core, the ache sharpening, professional lines blurring in the night's hold. Her gaze unflinching, mine drawn, the space charged with what the hidden loves promised. We sat like that till wax pooled, talking in fragments. Her first love lost to family pressure. My rural longings stifled young. The archive wrapped us, floorboards creaking soft, rain a distant patter. Hands stayed near, touches accidental but held, the rising pull demanding more than silence. Morning broke gray, light seeping through windows, storm spent. We packed the files, routine calling, but clarity sharpened. The unresolved feelings, the tension unresolved. Words hung unsaid, demanding confrontation soon. The archive no longer just work, but witness to what brewed between us. Morning light filtered through the rain-streaked windows, turning the archive gray and sharp. Elias blew out the last candle, wax hardened in uneven pools on the table. We moved slow, stacking files, the storm's residue hanging in damp air. Our hands brushed once more as I handed her a ledger, deliberate now, or maybe not, and she held the contact a beat too long. Eyes met, the pull from last night raw, unresolved. Back to work, she said, voice steady, but her fingers lingered before releasing. The routine snapped back, but heightened. Mornings brought the doors creak, coffee poured with measured space between us. We'd sit at the oak table, gloves on, deciphering the next stack. Women's petitions for voting rights, buried under men's signatures. Yet awareness strained everything. I'd catch her gaze drifting as I logged entries, her eyes tracing my hands, then snapping away. Proximity felt charged. Elbows on the scarred wood, knees nearly touching under the table. Professional boundaries stretched thin, like paper ready to tear. One afternoon, as sun slanted low, casting long shadows over the shelves, tension cracked. I reached for a faded photograph. 2 women, arm in arm, their smiles defiant. And our fingers overlapped again. Heat bloomed where skin met, breath catching. She pulled back first, standing abrupt, rubbing her neck. "Lena," she started, voice low, edged. "We can't." I looked up, heart thudding against my ribs. The archive's hush amplified it, dust motes suspended in the light. Can't what? But I knew. The vulnerability from the storm night lingered, our shared histories a bridge we'd half crossed. Crossing fully meant risking the structure holding us, her job as lead, mine as assistant in this isolated haven. She paced to the window, arms crossed, fields stretching empty beyond the glass. This, us, the way it's pulling. Her back was to me, shoulders taut, the flannel shirt pulling tight. I stood, the chair scraping loud in the quiet. "Elias, last night," external pressure hit then, shattering the moment. Her phone buzzed on the table, insistent, pulling her back. She glanced at the screen, face hardening. "Grant board," she muttered, answering. I watched as she paced, voice clipped. Timeline slipping, funding cut by half unless we deliver a presentation on the McAllister Collection's value. "The women's histories," she said into the phone. "They're key. But without proof of impact, the archive closes. My job goes." She hung up, sinking into the chair, hands clutching the table's edge. The threat landed heavy. Closure meant scattering the files, erasing the secrets we'd unearthed. Her life's work dissolving into boxes for some distant university. And her, adrift after 10 years in this solitude. My chest tightened, the internal crisis surging. Crossing lines now, amid this vulnerability, felt reckless. This job anchored me post-gran, the archive a refuge from grief. But the pull demanded honesty, even as fear clawed. What if admission shattered the professional shell, leaving us both exposed? "Elias," I said, sitting across, voice soft but firm. "The funding. We'll fight it. But us? We need to talk." She met my eyes, the strain evident, lines deepening around her mouth. Direct admission came then, raw. "I'm scared, Lena. of repeating past losses. Her words hung, vulnerability cracking her reserve. That partner I mentioned left because of this work. The isolation, the walls I built. Then family, after coming out, cut me off, said I tainted the legacy. Opening up here, with you, it feels like inviting that again. Loss on top of loss. The air thickened, her fear mirroring mine. The archive's dim light casting us in half shadows. I leaned forward, hands flat on the table, wood cool under palms. I get it. Rural upbringing, Grand's hidden life. It taught me to bury wanting. But this pull, it's not just work. It's real. Denying it strains everything. Tense standoff followed, debate sharpening. She shook her head, voice rising a notch. Revealing personal truths in this space? It's professional. The archive demands focus, boundaries, keep it safe. One slip, and the board sees favoritism, questions my judgment. Your position, too, assistant, under me. It risks the grant, the future. I push back, heart pounding. But hiding it risks us. The storm night showed parallels, those women's loves buried till it broke them. We're mirroring that, Elias, straining boundaries till they snap. What if the funding fight needs our full trust? Personal truths could strengthen the presentation, show the human stake. She stood again, pacing, boots thudding soft on floorboards. Trust, yes. But in professional space? The town's conservative. Whispers could close doors faster than funding cuts. I've lost enough. Her eyes flashed, fear and want warring. I rose too, closing the distance, the table no barrier now. Then what? Pretend the ache isn't there? It strains every moment, brushes, glances. The vulnerability we shared last night demands more. Silence stretched, charged, her breath uneven. The window rattled faintly, wind picking up outside. Finally, she stopped, facing me, inches apart. You're right. It can't stay buried. The admission hung, but decision shifted. The grant presentation, next week. We collaborate on salvaging key documents, prove the collection's worth, women's voices as core. It tests limits, working close, honest. But if we cross personal lines, we decide together. I nodded, relief mixing with the risk, the air still humming. The collaboration loomed, a test of boundaries amid the threat, pulling us deeper into the archive's depths. The week blurred into focused labor, the grant presentation looming like a storm on the horizon. Elias and I dove into the collaboration, pulling key documents from the drawer, women's letters, maps redrawn with their hidden claims, diaries that breathed life into erased voices. We worked side by side at the oak table, elbows brushing without apology now, the air between us charged but purposeful. Her notes layered over mine, her handwriting sharp beside my looping script, piecing a narrative that proved the archive's worth. Not just history, but reclaimed truths that could shift local understanding, draw funding from women's heritage groups. Morning started with coffee shared at the window, steam fogging the glass as we outlined slides, her voice steady, mapping the flow. Mine adding the emotional threads from the files. Focus on the human cost, she'd say, tapping a faded petition. The suppression, the resilience. I'd nod, adding details from grand stories, parallels that made the presentation pulse. Proximity built trust. Hands passed papers without the old hesitation. Fingers grazing warm. The archive's hush, a cocoon for our rhythm. The funding threat sharpened us. Closure meant losing this space. Her 10 years scattered. My fragile anchor gone. But together, we salvaged it. Arguments turning to agreements, late nights forging something stronger. The presentation day arrived. A drive into town under gray skies, the archive left locked behind us. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and stale air. suited figures around a table that dwarfed our stack of files. Elias stood first, her flannel traded for a crisp shirt, voice low but unflinching as she walked them through the slides. "These women's histories aren't footnotes," she said, projecting a diary page, the ink stark against the wall. "They're the foundation. Suppressed, yes, but vital. Land rights, migrations, bonds that built this region." I followed, heart thudding, sharing the personal stakes. How the files echoed silenced lives. Drawing from my own rural roots, the pull of uncovering what towns buried. Questions came sharp. Budgets, timelines, but our preparation held. One board member leaned in, eyes on a map. This could attract grants we missed. Nods rippled, and by the end, approval landed. Funding secured. The archive's future intact for another year, with promises of more if we delivered exhibits. Elias's shoulders eased as we packed up, her hand brushing mine in the hallway, a quiet victory in the touch. Driving back, fields blurring past, relief settled heavy, the threat lifted. Her job safe, our work validated. That evening, back in the archive's dim embrace, the breakthrough came quiet. We'd stayed late to reorganize, lamps flickering as we shelved the presentation files, the day's tension uncoiling slow. Rain pattered outside again, softer this time, wind whispering through cracks. I reached for the last box, her doing the same, and our hands met over it, deliberate, no accident. Time stretched, the wood cool under our grips, eyes locking in the low light. Pent-up tension released then, not in words or rush, but in the lean forward, her breath warm against my cheek. Our lips met tentative, then sure, the kiss tasting of coffee and dust. Her hand sliding to my neck, fingers threading my hair. It built from the ache we'd carried, storm nights, shared secrets, brushes held too long. Releasing in waves, bodies pressing close against the shelves. She pulled back first, forehead to mine, breath ragged. "Lena," she whispered, voice rough. "This. Us." No more needed. The acknowledgement mutual, hands clasping over the final document on the table. A ledger of women's bonds. Words unnecessary as thumbs traced knuckles. We sank into shared silence after, sitting on the floor amid scattered pages, backs against the table's legs. The archive wrapped us, floorboards creaking soft, lamps casting gold pools. Emotional release flowed without fanfare. No declarations, just the weight lifting. Connection affirmed in the quiet hold of her arm around my shoulders, my head on her chest, heartbeat steady under my ear. Vulnerability lingered, but safe now. The professional lines bent but not broken. Our partnership deeper. Forward glimpses came in fragments over the next days. We'd plan exhibits together, her mentioning a trail hike beyond town, me suggesting we frame the Sapphic letters as core threads. Continued work, she'd say, eyes warm, with room for more. Subtle promises wove in, keys shared permanently, evenings extending beyond sorting. The archive no longer solitary, but ours. The pull settled into steady warmth, rural isolation turning intimate, not stifling. It faded to our ongoing partnership then, deep in the archive's quiet depths, hands turning pages, lives uncovering each other amid the dust and light. Months later, the keys lay on the oak table between us, Elias sliding them back into my palm one evening as we closed a final exhibit case. "Yours now," she said, her fingers closing over mine, warm and sure. Access open, always. It wasn't a return, not really. Just a shift. Trust etched deeper than the archive's dust. The building hummed around us, shelves lined with reclaimed stories, women's voices no longer buried but framed in quiet light. The slow burn had yielded something steady, a warmth that filled the spaces between pages and glances. No grand gestures, just her hand finding mine over ledgers, evenings stretching into shared silences where words weren't needed. The rural isolation, once a weight, turned intimate. Fields outside whispering approval. The archive, our hidden world. Grief from Gran's loss softened here, woven into the histories we guarded together. her steady presence a balm against the ache. We'd hike the trails beyond town now, boots crunching gravel like the first days, talking of expansions, more grants, lives unfolding side by side. The pool settled into rhythm, Sapphic threads binding us amid the past's echoes. No more hesitation, just the quiet fulfillment of being seen, wanted, in this shared space. If this quiet pull resonates, the kind that builds slow in hidden corners, subscribe for more stories of hidden connections. Share yours below. Let's uncover them together.